Hey everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome to my channel. So in today's video we will be creating this looping shape animation inside of Blender. As you can see that it looks very good and at the same time it's very easy to create. Also the music used in today's video is sponsored by Upbeat. Learn more about them later in this video. So before I begin, if you guys are new here then please consider subscribing and make sure to press that bell icon so that you never miss another amazing video like this. So without wasting any further ado, let's get started. Alright, so right now I'm in Blender, and before I begin I would like to tell you that if you want to check out all the keys that I'm pressing, then you can have a look at this area and it will show all the keys that I'm pressing on my keyboard and all the mouse clicks. So now let's begin with this tutorial. So we have our default cube and we are not going to delete it. So let's press S and just scale this up. So I'm pressing 1.5 to scale it 1.5 times, or maybe we can scale it a little bit more. Yeah, I think this is looking better. So now we have our cube and now let's scale it along the Z axis. So press S, Z, and then you can just simply scale it down to something like this. Or you can also go under the items panel and from here you can do the scaling. So let's make it 0.4 or maybe 0.375. Yeah, I think this is too much, so let's stick with 3. Yeah, I think this is fine. So we have our cube. Now let's add another cube. So press Shift A, then go under the mesh and select cube. Now we want to take out this shape from this cube. So in order to do that, we are going to use a modifier. So first let me just quickly scale this up. So press S and I'm going to just scale it to something like this. And now we can select this, and if you go under the modifiers tab, from here you can add a modifier called boolean, and under the object let's select our cube one, which is this one, or you can just simply select the eyedropper and then just pick it up. So right away we have the shape cut off, but still it's visible because we have the cube enabled. So we can just simply disable it by clicking on this eye icon. So now you can see that we have cut out the shape. But before we proceed, we have to apply the modifier, because if we don't apply, then once we start moving this cube, you will see that the shape will also move. So before that, let's apply it. And now you can see that now I can move it freely and the shape will stay over here. Also, we don't need this cube, so we can enable it, then select it, press X to delete it. So we have our shape. Now let's rotate it. So press R, then rotate it along the X axis by 90 degree, just like this. So now we have our shape. So before we start adding multiple copies of it, we have to do some animation to it. So I'm going to bring my timeline up, and after that you can press I on the keyboard to add a keyframe for rotation, and let's move this to something around 60, and after that I'm going to set the Y rotation to 180 degree. After that you can just simply right click and click insert single keyframe. So if I play back, here you can see that we have this sort of animation. Right now it's not looking good because the keyframe interpolation is linear, so we can change that by simply going under the graph editor. So you can click on this icon and from here you can change it to graph editor, and after that you can click on this normalize button, just like this. So now let's drag and select all the keyframes, then you can press T, or you can just simply go under the keys and from here you can change the interpolation to Bezier. Now you can see that we have these handles and our motion is much smoother, but we want to add more smoothness to this. So we can do one more thing. We can select this, then press S 100 and do the same thing for this one. Select this, press S 100. So you can see that now we have more easing in the starting and at the end. This is exactly what we want. So once you are done with your animation, you can go back to the timeline And now we are ready to add bunch of copies of it along the y-axis. So in order to do that, we can select this, and again we are going to use a modifier. So let's go under the modifier, and this time we are going to use the array. So this is a very powerful modifier which allows you to create bunch of different copies of an object. So for this we don't want it to be along this side, so we can set this to 0. But in fact we want the copies to be along the y-axis, so we can set this value to something like -1.75. It's completely up to you. You can increase the gap between these however you want. Just don't overdo it because it will not look good. So now we can increase the number of count by simply increasing this value. So let's put 20 over here, and I think these are. So before I continue this video, I want to talk about Upbeat. So Upbeat is a new platform that provides free music for creators. You can use their music with no copyright complaints in your YouTube videos or on social media. They have thousands of tracks which are under different number of categories. You can play a song and download it directly from their website. Upbeat also has a premium membership which provides additional benefits at such an affordable price. So if you want to learn more about Upbeat or want to get some free music, then click the first link in the description below. Now let's continue with this video. I think these are fine. So now you will notice one more thing, that these are not individual elements, this is a single object. So in order to make it into different parts, we can just simply apply the modifier. And now you can see that again it's a single object, but we are going to separate it. So select this and then press tab to go into the edit mode. After that you can press P for separate menu, or you can go under the mesh and from here you can separate. Then click on by loose part. Now you can see that each of these object is a mesh in itself. So we can press tab to get out, and now we have individual copies of these. Now this step is not necessary, but I always like to do this. So we can select all the meshes and let's go under the object and set their origin to geometry. So now all of these have their origins in the center, and you will notice that all of them are animating at the same time. So we are going to add some offset to their animation. So let's do that. So we have our first keyframe over here. So we can select the second object, and after that you can select all the keyframes, or you can simply press A into the timeline area and it will select all the keyframes. Then press G and let's move them by 5 frames, just like that. So you can see it from here, and if I zoom in from here you can see that now the first keyframe is at 5, and we are going to do the same thing for all of these. So let's select the second one, and for this one we are going to move it to 10. So the next one will go at 15, next one at 20, then 25, and we have to do the same thing for all these meshes. So now I have offset their keyframes. So if I play back, here you can see that we have this sort of animation, which is looking nice. So once you are done with this, we are going to add a empty object because we want these to move along the camera in order to create a perfect loop. So let's press Shift A, and then under the empty, let's select the plane axis. And now we are going to select all of these. So let's start selecting them, and just make sure to select this empty at the end, just like this. So you can see that its color is different from this selection. So once you have selected the empty at the end, you can press Ctrl P to paint the object and select Keep Transform, just like this. So now I can select the empty. So if I move it, then you can see that all the objects are moving with it, so which is exactly what we want. So we have our meshes, and let me just quickly go under the camera, and first I'm going to set up my camera. So let's tweak its setting, and from perspective we are going to change this to orthographic, and let's zoom it out something like this, and let's change this frame to 1920 by 1920 so that we have a square frame, just like this. Now instead of moving our camera, we are going to move the empty. So we are going to use the transform properties. So from here, let's set this Y value to -10, just like this. So right now we have too much of zoom, so we can select the camera and let's select and just zoom in something like this. Now let's get out of the camera by pressing the numpad 0. So you will notice one more thing. If I select the first layer, then its position is at 0, 0. And if I select the second one, its position is at 1.05. And this next one is 2.1. So you can see that all of these are separated by a fixed distance, which is this 1.05. So remember this value because this will come in handy once we start looping this. So we have our setup. Now let's add some material and lighting to this. So let's go to the render tab and I'm using the Eevee. It's completely up to you. You can use cycles if you want. So under the Eevee, let's first add a plane. So Shift A, let's add a plane and I'm going to scale this up. So S5, or we can just simply scale it to something like this. And now let's place it below. So press G, Z, and let's just place it somewhere around here. We can go to the camera. Yeah, I think this is looking fine. Now let's select our light and we are going to add our own light. So press X to delete it. Then again press Shift A, go under the lights and we are going to use the area light. Now G, Z, and let's just place the light above. And let me just quickly scale this, something like this. So we are going to increase its intensity pretty much to something like 5000. So now you can see that we have this kind of look. And let me just quickly go out and I'm going to add bunch of other lights. But first let's add some materials to this. So first let's select our plane and we can go under the materials tab and let's click on new and let's call this blue. It's completely up to you. You can use whatever material you want. So I'm going to select something like this. So let me just quickly go under the materials tab. Yeah, I think this is looking fine. Now we are going to add the colors to these meshes as well. So let me just quickly select the first one and let's apply the blue one to it. Now you don't have to select each and individual mesh and then start applying materials to this. There is a really nice way to do this. So now I'm going to select the alternate mesh on which I am going to apply the blue color. So let's just select these just like this. So now you have to select the one mesh that already has the material at the end. So hold down the shift and click on it. So now you can see that this is the last selection. So we can parent or link the materials onto this by simply pressing Ctrl L. And after that you can see we have this option called materials. So if you click on it, you will notice that all the other objects have the same material. And we are going to do the same thing for the second one. But for this, let's create a new material. So let's add a new material and let's remove this one. Let's click on new and I'm going to add a little bit of pink red color. So I'm going to call it pink. Let's go to the base color and let's change it to something like this. Yeah, I think this is looking good. Now again, we are going to do the same thing. So select the other meshes while holding down the shift key and just select this one at the very end, just like this. Now we can press Ctrl L and after that link the materials. So you can see that we have all these objects and they have the material applied. On this red one or pink one, we are going to change few of these properties. So first I'm going to lower down the roughness, and on this one, blue one, let's do the same thing and we're going to just tweak it to something like this. Yeah, So now we have this, and let's go under the scene settings, and I'm going to enable ambient occlusion, and let's enable the screen space reflection, and let's go under it, and we're going to uncheck the half res, and let's check it out. So yeah, I think this is looking fine. So let me just select this, press Z, and I'm going to place it to something like this. So right now you can see that there is a flickering going on. It's probably because I'm recording right now. So let me just quickly check this out. So yeah, I think everything is fine. Now let's add few of other lights. But before that, let's start animating and create a loop. So now let's go under the camera, and I'm going to first move to the timeline, and let me just quickly move my indicator, and let's pick up a point, and let's say we are going to select this one. So now watch carefully and understand what I'm going to do over here. So I've selected this pink object, and you can see that its Y rotation is 52.4, and we all know that in order to create a perfect loop, we have to make the first and the last frame same so that it will look like a seamless loop. So in order to do that, we are going to remember and use this value, so 52.4. So now we have this pink one, so we can animate this and place another pink object over here and have its value to the same. So let's select this one, and I'm going to move to the timeline, and I'm going to move it forward, and I'm going to stop exactly where we have this value. So you can see that we have the 52.4. So we are going to animate this, and we are going to move this piece to come over here. So how to do that? So remember, the distance between these individual elements was 1.5. So we are going to make use of it. So let me just first take out the calculator. Here we have our calculator. Now let's add a keyframe for our object at the beginning. So I'm going to place it somewhere around 60, and now you can press I for location, and we can move it to wherever we want. And after that, again we have this piece, and let's select its point. So now I'm going to select this, and let's move the keyframe to somewhere over here, just like this. So now I'm going to move my timeline indicator and see where this object has the 52.4 value. So I'm moving, and you can see that right over here it has this value. So now I'm going to use the empty to move this piece and place it over here, but we don't know how much we have to move, but we do know that the distance between each of these is 1.05. So now let's calculate the number of pieces that we have to move. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have to move 4 pieces. So we can take out our calculator, and we know the distance between two objects is 1.05, and we have to move 4 objects. So we are going to multiply it by 4. So we have this value 4.2, and we can select our empty object, and you can see that its value is -10. So we are going to add 10 to this. 4.2 plus 10 is 14.2. So we are going to place this value over here, but with a negative sign. So -14.2. And let me just quickly right click, and let's insert a single keyframe. So if you have done everything correctly, you must have a perfect loop. So let's check out if we have a loop or not. So we can set the starting frame to 68, and we can set the end frame to 88. And now if I play back, here you can see that we have a perfect loop. So if you want to see it more clearly, then you can do one more thing. You can select your camera, then go under the viewport display, and from here we can increase or decrease the pass out opacity, something like this. So now only this region is visible. So if I play back, here you can see that we are not able to see the transition or any cut. So this is a seamless perfect loop. and you will notice that the animation is happening too fast. We want to slow this down. So I will show you a very nice technique that we can use to slow down your animation without having to change their keyframes. But before that, let's set up our scene and let's add some lights to this. So now we can probably pause this, and let me just quickly go out of this, and I'm going to select this light, then press Shift D to duplicate it. Then we can press G, Y, and let's move it along the Y axis, something like this, so that we have some light over here as well. We can probably select the camera and just move it out a little bit, just like this. Now don't overdo it, because again you will be able to see the ending point and we don't want to mess that out. So if you want to do a really zoomed out version of it, then you have to have more of these objects. So let's stick with this. Now we are going to add another light at the bottom. So let me just quickly go out this camera. So again you can press numpad 0, and let me just select this, press Shift D to duplicate it. After that you have to click, don't move, because otherwise it will move the light as well. And now I can press R, Phi 180 degree. So you can see that our light is upside down. We can press G, Z, and let's place it somewhere around here. We can probably zoom in, and let's select this, press G, Z, and let me just place it somewhere around here. And you can see that it's too bright, so we can set this value to something like 2000 or maybe 1000. Yeah, I think this is looking better. Again, if you want, you can just simply select the materials and you can play around with these reflection. If you don't want it at all, you can just increase the roughness, but I like to have a little bit of reflection, something like this. Now in order to check this out, that whether you have a perfect loop or not, we can do one more thing. We can go to the first frame, and which is the 68 frame. We can press F12 to render this frame, and let me just quickly zoom out. So here we have our first frame, and now we can select the slot button and let's click on the second slot, and I'm going to move it to somewhere around here. And now let's go to the last frame, and again press F12 to render this frame. Now we have both the frames and we can compare them by simply changing the slot value. So you can see that slot 1 and slot 2, both the frames are same. So that means we have a perfect loop, just like this. Now I think I want to move the camera to more of this side, because we have some static objects over here, and I think it would be nice to have some over here as well. So again we can move the Y position, something like this. So now if I play back, here you can see that now we have a couple of static objects over here as well. Again, if you want, you can zoom out, then you will have to add more of these over here. So now let me show you a really nice technique that you can use to make your animation slower without having to move any of these keyframes. So for that we can go under the output properties, and from here we can see that we have this option called time remapping, and the old one is at 100, the new one is also at 100. So you can increase the value of this new one. The more value you have, slower it will be, and right away you can see that now our animation is happening at a much slower rate. So we can probably set this to 350. So it's completely up to you, however you want, but you will notice that our animation is a little bit messed up. So we can fix that by simply changing the start and the end point. So in order to do that, let me just quickly first select our empty object. So now you can see that our animation starts at this point, but our indicator is at somewhere around here. So let me just quickly set this to 0, and let's set this to a really high value, something like 500. So I'm going to move the indicator, and let's see where it matches this keyframe. So somewhere around here. so you can use the arrow keys. So yeah, this is the place where we have the first keyframe, and you can note down this value. So it's 238. Just put it at the start and again start moving it, and we are going to place the endpoint where we have this value. So again I'm using the arrow keys, so this is the endpoint, so 308. So let's add 308 over here. So now again if I play back, here you can see that we have the perfect loop, but it's much slower. So this is a really nice technique when you want to slow down your animation without having to tweak any of the keyframes. So now let's see how you can render this out. So let's select the frame rate. So we already have 24 FPS, and from here you can select the output folder where you want to save your files. So right now it's at temporary, so you can just click over here, and from here you can select wherever you want to save the files. And after that we are going to go under the file format. Now it's completely up to you. You can save it as a image sequence or you can save it as a video. So I'm going to select the video option. Just click on FFmpeg, and after that you can go under the encoding, and from here you can change the output quality to perceptually lossless, and all the things will remain same. So we are pretty much done with this, and the final step is to render out the animation. So which you can do that by simply going to the render and click on render animation. After that it will save a video file which will have this one single loop, but in order to create it infinite loop you will have to use any other software, or you can use Blender itself. So I'll be using After Effects to show you how you can create an infinite loop. So now let's open up After Effects. Alright, so right now I'm in After Effects and I've already imported my file. So we can select this and drag it into a new composition just like this. Now first we are going to increase its duration, so I'm going to set this to something like 10 seconds. Just click on OK. Now we can probably zoom out. So here you can see that we have our single looping animation and we want to extend this. So there are two ways to do that. If you notice, then you will see that the first and the last keyframes are same, which is nice to have a perfect loop, but we will have this same frame twice, so we can just trim one of these frames just like this. So now we have our loop, and the quick method is just simply press Ctrl D and then just place the layer over here just like this. So now if I play back, here you can see that we have a perfect loop and there is no cut, it's all seamless. So this is how you can quickly add more of these copies and extend the duration. But the better way is to use the time remapping. So you can just simply select the layer, right click, go to time, enable time remapping, and then just simply zoom in and let's place it over here. Just delete the last keyframe, and now you can just simply click and hold and then add this expression loop out. Now you can easily select this and extend it. You can probably trim this from here and just place it something like this. So now you can see that we can increase its duration by simply dragging this point. So this is how you can create infinite looping animation. You can do the same thing in Blender or any other software. You can just simply align the layer and just simply duplicate it and offset it and just place it. So this is how you can create some really nice shape looping animation in Blender. So I hope you learned something from this video. The project files for this tutorial are available on Patreon. So if you are supporting me over there, then you can download it from there. And if you are not, then you might consider it, because you will get access to the tutorial project files and also the template files that are available exclusively for Patreons depending upon on their tier. Also, if you want to see more of these videos, then make sure to subscribe and don't forget to press that bell icon so that you never miss another amazing video like this. So with that being said, my name is Abhishek and I'll see you in the next one.